Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to another exciting episode of Elevation with Chris Oram, the show where we talk to individuals who have climbed the ladder of success. Today is episode 21, and we have a very special guest. Today is actually going to be the very first virtual guest, and I'd like to welcome G. Paul Hess to the show. G. Paul, if you don't know him, most recently the Chief Product Officer at Snap One, who's been creating incredible products as well as distribution for the smart home and connected home space for the last 20 or so years. G. Paul has been with Snap One since 2010, and he recently announced that he was transitioning out of his position as Chief Product Officer. For those that don't know Snap One, they had a portfolio of brands including Control4, Wattbox, Vigilant, and a ton of other vertically integrated products within the Snap One brand. And you may know them from Volutone and their distribution channel as well. But without further ado, I welcome G. Paul to the show. Welcome, G. Paul.
Chris, thanks for having me.
Cool. Thanks for being here. Thanks for calling in from North Carolina.
I am honored and humbled to be on your show.
No, it's an honor as well, G. Paul. So I wanted to start it off by talking about your most recent position, and that's the Chief Product Officer at Snap One. So for those that don't even know what a Chief Product Officer is, what is it in your words?
Well, it's in the name. It's everything product. So think about not only product management, which is usually the business side of creating products, but also the engineering and the development and the creation. So with the role at Snap One, the Chief Product Officer has multiple groups that report into that function. And as I said, it'd be engineering and development. So you've got software, mechanical, electrical engineering teams, but then you've got the business management teams and the owners of the brands and the products.
Mm-hmm.
You've got project management as well, and those are the folks that help keep all the trains on the track. So for Snap One, it's a large and very impressive worldwide group of folks.
Sure. And then when these products, there's so many different products, how do you manage to blend them all together under one brand portfolio?
Well, that is the challenge, but that's also the benefit. As a manufacturer who has all those products under their control, particularly the software side of those products,
Mm-hmm.
that helps leading to a great end customer experience. So now products that are built and designed to work together, to connect and complement one another. So yes, it is a lot to manage on one side, but it also gives a great platform for enabling great customer experiences.
Sure. So I personally use many Snap One products in my day-to-day life. One that comes to mind is the Wattbox with the oversea potential. I think that's huge for saving truck rolls and really being a great resource for integrators. However, I would say probably the most well-known product that is in the Snap One portfolio is Control4. So
Absolutely.
Control4 is an automation system. In your words, how would you describe Control4? I mean, you can control your entire home, but what is that?
Well, again, it's an experience is really what it is. It is bringing together all the subsystems in the home or small business into a single pane of glass, into a single app. Could be a touch screen. It could be something that actually just operates in the background based on events. It's the technology transcends all those subsystems from HVAC, lighting, audio, video, entertainment, and all the other security surveillance subsystems in the home.
Sure. And do you see that the connected home all in one app has absolutely blown up in the last decade?
Absolutely. There's no question. There's been so many different studies and reports around consumers preferring a single pane of glass. Many
Sure.
times I would hear folks want to argue the point that it's just as good to have a collection of apps and have different experiences for each of the subsystems in the home. And I can tell you from firsthand knowledge and seeing the data, but also data that's available from many of the trade organizations and the magazines within the industry, consumers want a consolidated, singular experience that brings all that technology together.
Sure. And in the work, I come from the DIY smart home space,
Yep.
and there's this project Matter, and they basically try and solve the problem that you're talking about, the interoperability,
Yep.
where devices from different manufacturers are not working together in one cohesive ecosystem. And that's something that Control4 was really leading the way with.
Absolutely. Control 4 really, if you go back to the early days of Control 4, they created a program that used the internal language was SDDP, but it was the technology that created drivers for all these subsystems.
Mhm.
And hundreds of manufacturers became involved with that program and essentially have created what Matter's trying to create. So Control 4 has this incredible broad list of 20,000 plus integrations
Yeah.
that allow for all that interconnectivity to happen.
Yeah, it's very cool. I mean, I'm a big fan of the Control 4 product as well as many other Snap One products as well. So I think that the portfolio of products is absolutely amazing. So in your tenure at Snap One, you were there since 2010, so almost 15 years. In your time there, you definitely rose the ranks. So I believe you got hired on at the manager level, and then somehow you got promoted to a VP, and then ultimately Chief Marketing Officer, and then Chief Product Officer. Can you talk to us about your first transition into a true leadership role, right? The manager is leading a team, but once you get to the VP, that's kind of the next level. And then talk about the C-suite, perhaps.
I tell you, the experience has been incredible. I did not pursue an MBA, but I would say that my MBA was received through working with and for Snap AV, which became Snap One. I joined at a time when it was a very small company. I say small; it was doing $30 to $50 million in revenue. It was the bottom of the market. The housing recession had happened, and integrators were looking for value. And Snap AV was there providing that value. And I was fortunate to make the transition from a prior company that was also in the space into a product role at Snap AV. And that product role, my job that I was hired for, was to create active products for the binary media distribution brand.
Okay.
This was predating HD-based T, so early on. And as soon as I joined, the company was just growing bonkers, and we were expanding categories. I quickly was involved with the called it Wirepath surveillance at the time, which we then later renamed to Luma. Was a product line that was mine early on, and the Arachnus brand was something that I launched early on. And then we really started to build our team, and we started to acquire other companies, and that's when the roles kind of shifted from just being a product manager without many resources in the company to having teams of folks that now could help deliver those products. So that path, that growth path, started with taking a chance, shifting my career. I was in sales before, but shifting my career to product, and then being very fortunate in some ways to be attached with a company that was just growing in a really opportune time to grow.
So, G-Paul, I want to just pause on one point that you mentioned there. So a lot of people transition maybe from a product role to a sales role, hoping to make more money, and you kind of did the opposite.
It was a big chance. I mean, part of it was led by the market at the time. Again, we were at the bottom of the housing market. I was living on the left coast in San Diego, and it was that was a tough place to be because of the industry. And Snap was in an opportune time where the products were lower price, much smaller portfolio, and so that transition was necessary for my family and I, number one. But also, you're right, going from sales to product. I think I was pulling on some of my prior experience where I had hoped to be an engineer coming out of high school. That was my goal, was to be an engineer. And I didn't make it there. Ended up in sales, enjoyed sales, but wanted to pursue something different.
Sure. When you made that decision to transition to Snap, did you feel any sense of doubt in that decision?
Well, of course. I mean, I think folks tend to make big decisions on top of big decisions.
Sure.
Recently married, just had our first child, moving from California to North Carolina. I mean, yes, of course, there's trepidation, but I would like to say it's all intelligence and great business decisions, when a lot of it also has to do with just luck and good timing.
Yeah, timing is everything. I mean, following your heart, following the path, I think is important, but having the trust in yourself to make those difficult decisions, especially at the time where it's like, is this guy crazy? Like, you're doing all this thing at once, and I guess it worked out. Would you agree with that assessment?
Well, of course it worked out. But I remember vividly the conversations with my wife about moving, first of all, moving her away from a support system, but also convincing her that, hey, moving to product, I'll travel less.
Yeah.
When actually it was just the opposite. I was traveling more because now I was going all the way to Asia instead of just staying domestic.
Sure. So that's a great point. So I studied international business in college. And G-Paul, I saw that you had done something similar to me where you did a study abroad. I did mine in Spain. You did yours in the Netherlands. Do you remember what that experience was like for you?
Incredible. I would encourage anybody, if they have opportunity to study abroad and travel abroad early, and my kids, I will encourage that they do the same thing. Take that opportunity to intermingle cultures and see other places and see how other people live. Incredible experience.
Sure. So that was your first step into international business. Would that be correct?
It was, yeah. It's funny. I was thinking back on this the other day, and my capstone class was a simulation. It was a business simulation as a content. All our classmates, we were broken into groups and
Yep.
pitted against one another. And the simulation, and I'm going to date myself, but it was early on. Was we were a company building computer parts
Yep.
in Southeast Asia and distributing and selling those parts globally. And so so every time of every week the professor would throw something new into the simulation as a challenge
Yep.
we would have to overcome. And I would have never imagined finishing that simulation and exiting that class knowing that that's pretty much exactly where I would end up 20 some odd years later.
Isn't that funny and crazy at the same time? Like that college course, the college simulation ended up being exactly what you're going to do for your profession.
Exactly.
So I have a specific question in relationship to the chief marketing officer to becoming the chief product officer. So at first you had become the chief marketing officer, and you have a background from college marketing. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Initially, I was going to be an architect, so I started. I didn't even start. I was accepted to the architecture school the summer before, switched gears, went to engineering school. Was in engineering school and quickly realized business leadership was where I wanted to be. So
Hmm.
within a semester or two, made that transition to business school. I was working all throughout college, and quite frankly, I was looking around saying, "What's my quickest way out of here?" And I looked at the different disciplines inside business and figured marketing would be the quickest and fastest and easiest way out. Also, something I really enjoyed. So I did pursue the business side of the business. It was international as a component, as we just spoke about, but it was oriented and focused on marketing. What's interesting is when Snap AV and Control 4 were merging, truly a merger, by the way, and I know it's always been a question, is we were bringing those companies together. We had lots of folks with duplicative titles, and there was an opportunity. Uh, Even though I had been the chief product officer at Snap AV prior to that, there was an opportunity for me to pursue the marketing side of the business, and I did that for a year and a half. It was a great experience to work with the creative teams and the marketing teams, and then the opportunity arose to regain the chief product officer role, and that's something that I jumped at that opportunity and was glad I did.
Very nice. So you were a part of the executive leadership team at Snap One, correct?
Correct.
So statistically, I believe they say about 85% of VP or above positions are all through your network, who you know. And prior to us turning on the recording, we were talking a little bit about how networking is so important. So when you had joined Snap, you mentioned that you found a great team of people. You're finally working with a team. And in your transition statement on LinkedIn, you mentioned that the people at Snap were everything to you.
Absolutely.
When you're finding these relationships, I'm sure you have to navigate through also workplace politics. How, I guess my question is how did you navigate that? How did you build a rapport with your colleagues while finding your truth, telling the truth, not hurting people's feelings in a personal manner, but truly stepping into that leadership position at the company?
Well, it's like we mentioned earlier. I mean, a good part of that starts with luck, being in the right place at the right time. Networking was critical. I would have never made it into Snap AV had I not had connections within the company prior to that. So that was an easy path.
Mm.
But then, once you're part of the team, and as the company is growing, as fast as Snap AV was growing, and as quickly as we were getting investment from private equity, we were acquiring companies. There was just constant change inside the leadership team, and those changes themselves create opportunities. It does create dynamics where sometimes the culture goes off to a direction that doesn't feel comfortable anymore, doesn't really fit the company, and I've said culture is not something you can mandate. Culture is it's a product of the leadership team and the folks that are involved in the company itself. And many times I would find we would have to have tough conversations with ourselves, look in the mirror, talk about culture, and try to recenter it to what we wanted out of the company. That requires tough conversations. And so I've read as many books as I could put my hands onto on crucial conversations and tough conversations to prepare myself for those type of exchanges.
So for someone in your position, I'm sure you've had plenty of tough conversations, and I'm sure the morning of the tough conversation, you still really don't want to have the conversation, but it's a duty, it's an obligation. Do you have any advice for perhaps a young leader that's struggling with having difficult conversations with coworkers or direct reports at work?
Yeah, I believe strongly in transparency and openness. I think a good word that, in fact, it was somebody from the industry that first taught me to use this word is if you are challenged with something, you can share that challenge by saying, "Hey, I'm frustrated," or feeling concerned. If you start from a position of feelings, nobody can argue with what your feelings are.
Right.
It helps open up the door and maybe ease that conversation. But again, being open, honest, transparent the whole way through the conversation is critical. And you're right. There's a lot of conversations that we would have had that they weigh on you. You're making decisions, and those decisions impact people, and that's really hard to do sometimes. But you also have to do what's right for the company and right for the business as well, not just the people.
Right. I mean, you can always ask the kind of contrary question, like, what if I didn't have this conversation?
Right.
The problem probably would not get solved or addressed, and it might make it worse.
That's right. We did a lot of team building events, which opened the door to have just to make it easier to have those conversations. And you can imagine every type of different model that you can try to check what type of individual you are, how you're wired.
Yep.
But those built a lot of pathways to have those conversations and made them a lot easier. So investing in team building and some of those exercises, it sounds like it's business school material and why waste the time, but
Yep.
those investments really return when you can have conversations that are open rather than not having them.
I mean, culture is one of those buzzwords. Like, what does culture exactly mean? But you know when you're in a good culture. And I think that's kind of what you're saying is that, there's different periods of Snap throughout 15 years, but overall, the culture at Snap is what you're going to miss the most.
Absolutely. I say that over and over. It's the people and the culture of the company.
Awesome. Okay, let's take a step back. So prior to you working at Snap AV at that time, so you started off in the integrator world. That was your first real job out of college. Can you tell us about that?
During,
Go
it was
ahead.
before college, yeah. I'd always had jobs throughout high school and into college. And during college, probably one of the most impressionable jobs was working Circuit City. I'm going to date myself again. Circuit City, back in the days when it was, I had full floor sales, it was commission sales, and it was 5-year warranties. And you could make a fair amount of money working Circuit City at the time. But what was most impressionable about that job was learning real time what worked and what doesn't work in sales, and just how to engage with the public and how to negotiate and how to talk. Great experience. One of the store managers left Circuit City and started a boutique shop. This was early custom CD channel years.
Yep.
And I followed them for the sales side, and I would find myself to close the deal offering to connect the system that evening. I say, I'll stop by on my way home and connect the system for you.
Yeah.
That was my first experience, truly the definition of a trunk slammer in college.
Nice. Hey, it worked though, right? I mean,
It worked.
it seemed like a good sales strategy. For you to call it, the trunk selling, I would call it added value.
True, absolutely.
And I'm sure you got a couple tips in your day by doing that. And I'm sure it helps you not only learn the sales side, but now you're the technician too.
That's right. That's right. And if you understand the product from a technical standpoint, it makes it a lot easier to sell.
For sure. I think that's definitely one area where, I've never been an AV technician. I wanted to be an AV technician at some point in my life, but I gained so much knowledge from our technicians that I'm able to absorb. But I think if I did have a year in the field, I think there would definitely be some value there.
Absolutely.
So after you left the integration firm, you mentioned that you were referred to what was called at the time Elon by a friend of ours, a friend of the pod, Paul Starkey, who's been a guest on the podcast before. You mentioned that he was very pivotal in helping you out in your career. So I want to give a big shout out to Paul for that.
Yeah, I second that. Paul has been an incredible mentor and supporter, and one of the many individuals that I can say I wouldn't be here with had I not had that engagement and that time working with Paul.
Sure. So you joined Elan, and what were you doing at Elan at the time? You were in sales?
Yeah, Paul was he led the sales side, sales and marketing side of the business, and Paul wanted to invest more in early integrators, smaller businesses that were typically buying through distribution. So he had created this new role, which was a sales role that called on the distributors across North America, and developing those up and coming integrators who were typically smaller businesses buying through distribution. And so that was my job, traveling the country, meeting integrators, meeting with the distributors, doing hands-on training, technical classes, doing sales training classes. And man, I really enjoyed that. That's where I really got the opportunity to meet so many integrators and really enjoyed the dynamics of the industry.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like kind of day by day you were building new relationships and, no, you don't know what the relationship is going to lead to 20 years down the road, but
That's right.
I'm sure those people that you helped out at the Elan days, I'm sure many of them you still keep in close touch with.
Very much so. Some are still my closest industry friends, and really enjoy getting to catch up with them at all the different events.
Sure. So, G. Paul, I would say this is my wording. I would say that you've been playing business at a high level for the last 25 years in the connected home space.
I would agree. Yeah, it's not the product; it's been the business.
Yep. So, as someone who's a successful leader, a leader of others, and someone who is on the executive team of a publicly traded company, I'm sure that work-life balance is not always perfect. It's not always I'm home at 5, ready to eat dinner. I'm sure there's been long nights where dinner had to suffer. But at the end of the day, you have a family. I want to ask for my personal recommendation. I am newly engaged. I want to be a dad probably here in the next 2 years. I want to take your advice on what you would suggest for someone who wants to be a new father as well as a successful businessman.
Well, number one, congrats. That's all
Thank
awesome
you.
news. It's fantastic, exciting time in your life.
Much appreciated.
I'm in no way an expert. No way have I perfected this, but my recommendation would be um, to be available and to be present. And man, I would break that rule many times. But the time that you do get together with your family, phones down, email down, spend that time and invest in that time because that's the most critical and the best time to enjoy the family. You still have to travel, you still have to do things to
Yeah.
help pay the bills and put food on the table. But when you do have that opportunity, making sure you're present and available is really critical. Something I'm still practicing today.
Yeah. It's always a work in progress, but that's excellent point of advice. So I guess maybe a follow-up question to that is when we're talking about work-life balance, I went to a men's retreat a few months ago actually, and many of the men suffered from not knowing when to cut off work, right? Some may call them a workaholic and amongst the men, I kind of saw myself with that. Like I don't want to say that I'm addicted to my phone and reading my email, but like I check it often. I think statistically people are checking their phone over 100 times a day. And I don't, I struggle to know when to turn off work because in this industry, residential home technology, someone's home is going on 24/7 and that's nothing that is going to change.
Well, the passion is important, number one. So doing something you love is great, but you do have to find that balance, and that's a hard one again that folks work on finding all their life. I was fortunate early on. I was able to invest through Snap AV into an executive coach program, and anybody who has this opportunity should jump at the chance to have an executive coach and to have a mentor. And it's challenging to do that because the first one of the first steps in having an executive coach is a 360-degree evaluation.
Mhm.
And what they're doing is they're looking for feedback from folks that might be above you, lateral to your role, folks that might report to you, and they're giving you real open feedback. In fact, they're giving the coach the feedback. The coach is then going to consolidate that, make it anonymous, and
Yeah.
share that with you. And what I heard back was workaholic, sending emails all hours of the night or weekend, all these things that when I heard about it horrified me. And they were
Yeah.
exactly the person that I wasn't trying to be. That wasn't the goal to
Yeah.
send those emails. I was just passionate and excited. But what I quickly learned was you yourself and your team members all need to find the right time to have those communications and those conversations,
Sure.
and give folks that space to have that time.
Because I'm sure if you're working in a culture where it's work, work, work all the time, it's like, why didn't you reply to my 4 a.m. email by 6 a.m.? It's like,
Exactly.
that's not going to set a precedent of good culture.
Right. And of course, there's times where there's a board meeting, the conversation, we need details now, or there's a
Yes.
product issue, knock on wood.
Yeah.
We've got to address that. You're going to break those rules, but
Yeah.
learning more about how to engage with others, and help protect their time, and giving them permission to have their own personal life and
Yeah.
their own time to be available for their family is really important.
So one of the words that Gen Z talks about, and let me know if you've heard this word, they love to talk about boundaries.
Not a word I've used,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can definitely appreciate it. I mean, boundaries. I would try not to send emails before a certain time, or after a certain time, or on
Sure.
weekends. I would cheat often. I would
Sure.
use the scheduling function
Yes.
of
Yes. I do
emails
that all
to
the
be able,
time.
because I'm in the moment. I'm thinking about this topic. I want to get it off my checklist, but I don't need to put it on somebody else's checklist during
Right
their
away.
time. But yeah, boundaries, I'm sure, is a prevalent word today.
Yep. It went from triggered, you're triggering me right now, and now I'm laying out my boundaries to you.
Hey, that's another word that we used to use. We learned it in one of our coaching team coaching exercises, where it's okay to say, "Hey, here are my triggers," and
Yeah.
share those with others so that folks know what are those triggers.
Sure. So in the last couple of minutes, you talked about passion, and you were telling me in your early days you wanted to be an architect, then you wanted to be an engineer, then you somehow found a love for connected home technology, right? Where did that come into the picture? Were you a nerd? Were you an athlete in high school? Tell me about like your early years and how you started to fall in love with computers and
Well, for those who
technology.
know me, they would say definitely not an athlete. I was definitely not an athlete in high school.
Yep.
I'm not sure about a nerd, but I would blame my father. I remember my father was a builder, so I think a lot of these jobs and roles that have interested me have revolved around the building industry. And my father was very technical. We had a C-band satellite, if anybody can remember those massive satellite dishes. That was the first technology in the home, and he brought home a Dolby decoders. It was one of the first Dolby decoders. There's only three channels,
Yeah.
left, right, and a monoed surround channels.
Mhm.
And so those are my first memorable experiences with residential technology that really, I think, helped gear me up for what I ultimately got into.
And did you get the bug right away? Did you have to help your dad, or were you
Oh
just
yeah,
fascinated by what he was doing?
I was interested in the technology. He was taking speakers, and this predated any of the speaker companies that are doing in-wall speakers today. But he was
Yeah.
taking box speakers and building them into the walls of the homes, and wiring it with regular old zip cord. Again, this is dating me as early on, but definitely just interests me. And so I really enjoyed music. Really enjoyed having audio around, and that's what fed that passion.
Very cool. So you decided that that's what you wanted to do for a living. How did you get that integrator job?
The integrator job, I tend to skip over some areas. I left college and took what I would call a real job. The real job being, it was a Fortune 500 company, and I was a buyer for that company. I had to wear a suit. I had to commute. I was stuck in a cubicle,
Hmm.
and it was a 9 to 5 standard job. I couldn't last more than 3 months. I hated it. I couldn't stand it.
Yeah.
So I'd been at the boutique AV shop selling, and I was leaving this role. This Fortune 500 was supposed to be the perfect first out of college job, and I contacted a local distributor for high end appliances. They were selling to builders and homeowners who were building homes, and they were installing satellite dishes at the time.
Hmm.
And I said, "Hey, I want to join the team, and I want to install audio video." They said, "Well, we're not doing any of that. There's a job for satellites, and you can join for that job." And I said, "I'll take it." And a
Yep.
few months later, we were selling audio video.
Nice. So it
So
sounds
that's
like you
where it
had
all
an impact
started.
there.
Yeah.
So you mentioned just a moment ago that as far as finding the perfect job out of college, what it oftentimes our lives are already set up for us before we know it. You go to college, you get a perfect job, you start a family, you retire at 65, and that's that. So you got the perfect job on paper, but you hated it. So go ahead.
Right. Well, the one I hated was the one that was that corporate. You're right. That
Yeah.
corporate job.
Yeah.
Hated that life. Yes.
So it's funny enough how things work out. So I live in Las Vegas. I had done an internship for a casino company out here, MGM Resorts, who's the largest employer in Nevada. And I had applied for a full-time job out of college and I didn't get that job. And in reflection, that was one of the best things to ever happen. What would have been a perfect corporate job for a Las Vegas resident, and me not getting that ended up driving me to pursue my passion and find the smart home industry. And the smart home industry, I found really the professional side when I went to CEDIA in 2022. And I was just letting you know prior to the recording of this show, that's how I found you and your counterparts at the main control companies, we'll call them. And this panel was absolutely incredible. I don't recall exactly what the content of the panel was, but after the panel, there was an open Q&A, and I just recall nothing but respect for my questions. You guys gave me incredible opportunity, incredible advice on someone who wanted to become part of this industry. And I think 3 years later, having you on the show, having this conversation now, I just think it's come a long way. So I really want to thank you for the moment that you changed my life, my trajectory. And I really want to say thank you for coming on the show today, G. Paul.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Cool. So CEDIA. So CEDIA is one of those shows that everyone in our industry goes to. It's the show of the year. Are you going to miss going to CEDIA?
Absolutely. I mean, CEDIA is always the reunion, right? It's
Yeah.
folks are catching up, and what's interesting, this industry now has so many groups, and there are so many smaller shows or different events that happen over time as well. But CEDIA is like the capstone. It's the one where you expect to see everybody.
And then as far as Snap AV, what is the relationship like with the smaller buying groups, right? Are they have to have some sort of agreement? Is that correct? That Snap would work well with all of the buying groups?
Well, fortunately, that role was left to a counterpart of mine. So while I got the benefits of having connections with all the buying groups, I don't
Sure.
always have all the details. But
Sure.
yes, I mean, Snap AV, Snap One has there's 3 to 4,000 products in the portfolio, 20 some odd categories, 22, 23 brands. I mean, it's hard to be in the industry and not have some touch point with the company.
Yeah. So out of all the brands, I just want to focus on how to get everything right, because let's say you have 20 brands and there's all these different products under the brands, getting them to all work together must have been a challenge, to say the least.
Well, it's never ending. Yes.
How do you bring it all together? How do you, I'm sure there's issues popping up every single day, things you don't even anticipate. I mean, I can make a comparison, right? You have no affiliation with Sonos directly, but their recent app launch, no one is going to disagree that was a complete failure.
Right. Yeah, there's so many great business cases. And look, we had our own. We didn't always get it right. And I think many folks will probably recognize what I'm talking about where we didn't get it right. But the difference is, one is always working to make it right, right? I mean, that's the goal, is to make these things operational. But when you don't make it right, then standing behind and supporting those products as well. For a company that has as many as Snap One has, the challenge isn't as much as getting all the products to work well together. You've got great engineers and great products to make that happen, but the landscape around you is constantly changing. Mm-hmm. So as other businesses evolve and other technologies evolve, that really can become the challenge, is staying current with the latest Zigbee standards, for example. That change can create an impact on the product line that then now the product team has to respond to, and that may not have been on their product plan. Their product plan may have included launching a new widget that the industry had been clamoring for, but yet those dollars have to be invested on something that, because technology evolves constantly, those dollars have to be invested at supporting that new technology.
Sure. And I mean, one little kind of hiccup that has happened during my tenure is Apple did an update on tvOS 18, and it completely bricked all of the IP control for all of the control systems. So it's these changes these small changes that can make a giant impact. Now my audio video system is no longer working.
Well, see, and I talk a lot about the importance of consistency and repeatability. And, look, customers want simplicity. They want reliability. And our industry can offer that. I think where we get into trouble, I'm going to say we, I'm going to include all of us here, but there are some great companies and great manufacturers and great installation companies that are out there. It's when we don't we don't have a process, and we
Hmm.
don't maintain consistency and repeatability. The companies, as far on the installation side, that see struggle are the ones who are delivering a completely new and different system every time. You can't be an expert at that. And so, inside the Snap One world and inside any of the other competitive brands as well, color in the lines. Use the products that it's best made to integrate with, and learn those products. Install them in your own home. Live with them. Know how they respond, and make your system have a process. Make it systematic, consistent, and repeatable. And that is what's going to deliver great experiences, and that creates the flywheel. Those great experiences, now the customers are coming back. They're referring to others. They're excited about their technology instead of saying, you know what, this next house, I don't want technology anymore. I had that and it didn't work well.
Right. I mean, that is such a great point. We're going to definitely clip that here. But you just said my thesis. It's like I'm such a systems thinker. I don't think that the first time to install a product or try something new should be in a client's home. There should be a repeatable process
Absolutely.
that's been documented that we can repeat this over and over and over again.
Well, and it sounds self-serving, but I can say it now out of the role that I'm no longer in. Follow the manufacturer's recommendations. Don't
Hmm.
try to reinvent the wheel every
Right.
time. And um, even if it's a different manufacturer, I like that example of coloring in the lines instead of having a blank canvas for every new project. And you're going to find not only are you delivering better experiences, the business is going to operate better. It's going to be more profitable. There's just so many benefits to it.
See, that's one thing. That's one issue I've always had with the industry is that a lot of people call it custom integration, and I feel that that's the wrong way to look at things. Maybe at the top 1% of people, you can do things custom that you've never done before. They want this really incredible thing. But I think for most luxury high-end homes, they want the same thing. They want their TVs to work. They want their networking to work. They just want things to work. And I think when you can have it work, people love the technology. And when it doesn't work and it's truly a hindrance, like if my video distribution system's not working and I paid $20,000 for it, I might as well just get rid of that and plug in my Apple TV for $100.
That's exactly right. Exactly. And I've said it many times. I've had the same debate where it can still be custom. You might be operating from your go-to list of products and manufacturers and vendors, but how you deliver that experience ultimately, that is what you're going to customize to that customer's lifestyle, to that
Hmm.
homeowner's lifestyle. So still the same products on every job, but fine tuning and tweaking it for their lifestyle to have things happen the way they want to happen. That's where the custom part comes in.
Sure. That's well said. So excellent. As far as like different products, different brands, so we could use some examples at Snap. So let's say you have two different camera manufacturer brands or lines. How do you merge them? How do you make one the high end one and one the lower end one? Like, talk to me about how to consolidate a brand.
Well, there's so much into that, and that's where as a product leader, as a product chief product officer, I mean, you're pulling on a lot of engineering components to that on how to make that happen, but also marketing and business components. And Snap AV, later Snap One, was fortunate to have acquired various brands. Control 4, even predating the merger, had acquired various brands, and then how now to go to market with multiple brands under a singular category. Uh, Books have been written about this and will continue to be written about it. So there is no fine answer. But
Mm.
one of the strategies that I've always gravitated towards was a good, better, best strategy. In fact, it's a strategy that goes all the way back to even working early with Paul Starkey
Yep.
when we were talking with distributors and just having packages that we would recommend integrators offer to their customers. Very
Hmm.
simple packages, good, better, best.
Yeah.
That philosophy transitions into branding and how to structure your different brands inside of a vertical.
Sure. So when we talk about verticals, we could talk about cameras, networking equipment, anything like that. The dealers, the consumers, they have so many options to choose from. If you're looking at this and say, I've never heard of any of these 20 camera manufacturing brands, which one should I pick and why? Like from a dealer's perspective or a consumer's perspective, how are you going to pick which of the 20 manufacturers you're going to put in your home?
Well, of course, you can get out the spreadsheet and create your columns and compare all the pros and cons and all the specifications. But what I like to remind this industry is there's this loss. First of all, what the customer is buying isn't that product brand at the end of the day. As much as any manufacturer, self included, would like to have believed they're buying the product, many
Yeah,
times what ultimately the customer is buying is the experience.
sure.
They want security and surveillance. It's our jobs, it's the integrator's job, the manufacturer's job to make and deliver products that can deliver that experience. And then it's the sales side of the business to help reinforce why those products are best for that application.
Sure. At Snap, was there a chief experience officer, or I'm sure that's they're almost related, right? So product is focusing on the equipment, experience is focusing on something maybe a little less tangible. It's more like someone's feeling about their products.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That was something that Snap started to focus on once Snap AV and Control4 came together. We had a group that was very much focused on experiences. So while you've got a group of product managers who own the products and the brands, you have another group of product managers who own the experience of how those things fit and feel and come together. The most ubiquitous example of that, of course, is the user interface, but it goes beyond the user interface and complements the entire brand. So that's definitely a strategy that Snap One has employed.
Sure. And I think one reason, from my perspective that Snap can be successful is, let's say I'm buying 5 different products from Snap One and I'm currently using, we'll call it Eero or Ubiquity for networking. It makes sense if I'm already buying these 5 other products from Snap that, hey, maybe I'll check out their networking thing and see what's up with Arachnus, and maybe it'll be a best in class fit and I can just shop at one spot. I think that's the end goal, correct?
Well, of course, from a sales side and a revenue side, yes, that's the end goal. But I'm going to pull on things we said earlier, and also make kind of a plea to the industry. One is support the manufacturers that are supporting the industry. That's most important, right? Is the ones who are help delivering these custom experiences. And as I stated, you can interchange the manufacturers, but if you go with their recommended connected products,
Hmm.
that's what's in their labs. That's what's in their test systems. That's what's in their build cases when they're building these products.
Yeah.
So the likelihood of having a much higher reliable system comes from using the products and the brands of the products that the manufacturer has recommended. Yes, it does sound a bit self-serving, but think about it. Like I said, manufacturers who have control of the software and the hardware all the way through that stack can deliver those great experiences. So when integrators start to mix and match, and then even worse, mix and match and change out on every job they deliver, that's where we leave end customers with bad experiences.
As a customer, should you have the freedom to choose which products you want to use in your home? Or as the manufacturer, as Snap One, should you decide what should be best for your customers?
Well, I believe in choice. I think it's very important for the end customer to have choice, for the integrator to have choice as well. But the facts again still stand that typically your best experience will be delivered on those that are built and tested to work together. But everybody should have choice, and I still would argue that the average consumer is not picking apart the proposal looking at every brand. They're going to pick key points that they might have some experience with. Of course, they always are going to pick the displays. That's an easy one to go price shop and compare.
Hmm.
And then there's categories of products that have very well-known brand names, DIY brands, and you can use those. Those are going to work in many cases. Those are going to work just fine. But I believe, and I would demonstrate it in my own home, you can deliver even better experiences with the provided set of solutions that the manufacturer has built.
So your standpoint would be the manufacturer probably has your best interest in mind. They have created this. They've tested these systems working together. That's our recommendation to you. However, you're the consumer. We want you to have the freedom. If you don't want to use our brand for X, Y, and Z product category, you don't have to, and we're okay with that. I think I stand with you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what Control4 has done with, we talked about earlier, the SDDP program works with Control4 program, that there is connectivity with all these systems that are out there. But I can tell you in my home, and this sounds like a sales pitch, but in my home, I have a incredibly reliable, highly functional system.
Mhm.
Now, I do live on the edge or have lived on the edge with alpha and beta versions. And
Yep.
so that can be fun at times, but the system is rock solid and reliable and does what it's supposed to do, and it's built on personally my experiences of I know what products that work best combined together and interconnected. Those are the same products that of course, your manufacturers are going to recommend for their solutions as well.
Sure. And I want to take this chance. So there's this open source project in the kind of DIY smart home community called Home Assistant. Are you familiar with Home Assistant?
I've read up on it. Yes, I haven't experienced it myself.
So Home Assistant, I've done a couple deployments of Home Assistant, and it's similar to what you're talking about in terms of Control4, where any manufacturer under the sun can create a driver where you can have kind of a unified smart home platform.
Yep.
And Home Assistant is all open source. It's free. You just have to have a Raspberry Pi, and you can kind of build it out from there. I think when I first went to that CEDIA show, I think a lot of people don't even think about the DIY space. And I think so, G-Paul, I do some regular recordings on YouTube about smart home news. Like, I have an Apple smart home. I use HomeKit in my home. And Apple, I believe this year or next year, is going to be making a big push into the smart home space. They're already in it, but I think they're going to become a leader in the space. And I think they're going to give perhaps people in the CEDIA channel a run for their money. And that's what I've been saying since my first CEDIA show in 2022. And I'm waiting for it to come to fruition. And I just made a video that it's going to happen soon.
So many great points to this. I've had this debate endless times, and it's a really good one and fun one to have. The industry, first of all, I'd argue that the end customer looking for those solutions, that's not the end customer we're typically looking for.
Right.
We're looking for the end customer, and there are incredible amounts of them that have a fair net worth or high net worth.
Yep.
They are too busy to try to understand this technology. They don't want to be their own CIO of their home or chief technology officer for their home. So that's a very dedicated customer that traditionally our industry has served. Now, I'm not denying there are some great products out there, DIY products, and I experience all of them. I'm a gadget individual, and I get to play with many of them. Home Assistant's not one of them I've gotten to play with yet, but I've read up on it. And there's a market for that. And there's folks that are going to be excited, probably more technical folks that are outside the industry that want to have their home and offer those solutions. What our industry is looking for, though, is that customer who wants a solution that has got an integrator that is standing behind that solution, ready to support them. Because at the end of the day, it is technology. And I don't care what technology it is, there's going to be some type of challenge. And having that customer service that the integrator can offer and the manufacturer can back up is what sets us apart from the DIY industry.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. There's definitely a premium to the luxury home service market. There's definitely a higher cost to entry. I think one thing we'll see probably over the next 10 years is that you could almost find a similar result in the DIY space for a fraction of the price. It might not be as luxurious. It might not be, done by a professional. But I think for the tinkerers that there's definitely going to be some growth in the connected home space.
Well, I think the other dynamic, I totally agree. I think the other dynamic is interesting is we always have this, it's this fear that this latest technology is going to take over and consume the world. And it never really plays out that way. I mean, Matter's a good example. A few years ago, that was all that you read in the magazines was Matter's the solution. It's going to be the end of the smart home industry, the custom smart home industry. Not the case. And I can go down endless examples of that where, yes, these manufacturers, these products, they do have impacts on the industry, but there's always there's always a customer in a niche that's looking for something that's elevated, that's higher level. This is that part of it's the lost art of sales that I think is missing from a good part of this industry of being able to offer and explain these products to our potential end customers of why they're different, why they're better, and why their experience is going to be better with them.
Sure. I mean, I think I could give a classic example. It's, you could get a DIY doorbell, or you could get a luxurious door station, and that could be 5 times the cost. And I think the person that wants to buy the luxurious door station is doing it purely on aesthetics so that it can fit in well with their multi-million-dollar home rather than this piece of plastic sitting on their stucco or stone or whatever surface they have.
Absolutely. And there's so many other elements too that again, I think those DIY doorbells, they have their place and they work very well. If you have customers that are privacy conscious, then DIY is probably not the place for them. If they're really concerned about their privacy and their security and the IoT devices, I would look for manufacturers that aren't going to be risking that.
Sure. And I think one of the last topics I want to talk about is AI. So I know some of the camera brands at Snap, we're big on AI detection. And I know that AI is a buzzword of the year and last year. And prior to jumping on the call, we talked about how I use AI every single day. You use AI every single day. I know within alarm systems are starting to adopt AI and starting to learn more about how people are living. There's this classic Disney movie that encompasses what a smart home can be. I think that's like the classic example, maybe besides the Jetsons. But I think, when is your home going to start making decisions on your behalf or asking you questions on your behalf?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and one that left better to the folks at Snap, for example, to answer. But I think from my point of view is, yes, of course, AI is going to evolve and accelerate the industry in so many ways. And surveillance is always that ubiquitous example of where AI at the edge can, or even centralized, can do things based on vehicle, person, what have you. And there's so many ways to expand on that. So I think we're going to see it more and more. I know that there are many of the manufacturers are investing in that in the background. So you'll see evidence of that on how maybe macros become available automatically of systems that notice you do something repetitively. Can I automate that for you? Can I do that for you? And begin to offer you. Making decisions for you is, I don't think, something that most folks are going to be comfortable with, but offering you simplicity to create a rule or a macro or a series of events based on your history, and then you getting to make that decision, that's probably more near term.
So it's going to make suggestions and it'll leave it up to you what you want to do. You're the final decision maker. So I can remain the decision maker of my household, is what you're saying.
That's what I would want.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I think there might be some risk takers that leave their smart home up to whatever it wants to do. That's risky, but we'll see what happens. You never know. I think that AI is really going to, it is changing the world. It's kind of like our smartphone, where it started off very basic, but I think it's continuing to grow and grow. I mean, some of the image and video generation is horrifying, but it's cool at the same time.
Yeah. A lot of curiosity. I think there's a lot of curiosity around it, but people are going to be very protective of their homes, right?
Sure.
It's one thing to do it in a search tool online. It's another thing to enable your home to take control.
Yeah, I mean, I have some crazy kind of Russian hackers comment on my YouTube channel sometimes. They're like, you have to be careful of this smart home, right? If you have all of these manufacturers, they'll lock you in your home and keep you trapped as a prisoner, right? It's like, that is so sci-fi, but it's like that could be the real world.
It could be.
I mean, people talk about with Tesla that, if someone wanted to control you and, lock you in your car and take you to prison for doing something wrong, that they probably could do that at this point, which is a little bit horrifying to think about as well.
That is.
So, G-Paul, we got about 5 minutes left. Is there anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to talk about? I mean, one topic that we definitely can talk about is you've transitioned out of Snap. What's next? If someone is desperately watching this podcast, they say, man, I've been waiting to get G-Paul on my team. I've been waiting 15 years to get G-Paul on my team, and now's my opportunity.
Well, this year I'm really focused on family. So taking a bit of time off. We've got some big summer plans with family trips to the beach. So we're looking forward to that. My personal side interests outside of technology have been around land conservation, land stewardship, forestry, and agriculture. We're very fortunate. We've got property in the western North Carolina mountains, and it's incredible just being able to spend time very remote, beautiful part of the world that we are working hard to conserve and protect and develop for our legacy and for our future. So that's where my current focus is.
Sure.
I'm on social media. I don't use it often. I do check in once or twice a week, but
Sure.
LinkedIn and Facebook, I've got professional profiles on both of those. And if anybody wants to catch up, I would love to engage and chat.
Sure. And G-Paul, I want to say, I appreciate you being this tremendous resource for me. We've gone, back and forth getting this podcast to happen, and I just really appreciate you coming on, taking the time to do this. I look up to you as an incredible leader within our connected home space. I would aspire to be as successful as you and to be, half the man that you are. it would be an incredible honor. But I wanted to say next time you're in Vegas, we're definitely going to get lunch on me if that's an option.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Perfect. And if I'm ever in Charlotte, North Carolina, I hope that offer is on the table for myself as well.
Absolutely. Please stop by. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I think you're providing a great service as well. There's such an important business and personal development side that this industry too often becomes product only, product focused. And so I think you're providing a great resource for folks looking to help self-develop and to grow their business.
I mean, it comes down to how can you lead yourself? Are you doing the wise things for your life? Are you doing the proper habits that can make you a leader? Are you helping yourself or are you hindering yourself? I mean, I live in Las Vegas. There's a lot of sin that goes on here in Sin City. And it's definitely easy to get caught up in that. But I think really leading yourself, making good habits and caring about the people around you are like what will bring you to success.
Totally agreed. And I remember listening just recently, you mentioned Paul Starkey on your podcast, and I loved his example of helping the next guy in line.
Yeah.
Such an important, and that really is that's that culture that Paul created that really drew me to his mentorship and his style.
Yeah, so Paul's an absolute legend. I am blessed that he wrote my letter of recommendation to Eagle Century. And then just want to give one last shout out to Greg Simmons, who's the former owner of Eagle Century. You worked with him previously at Snap, correct?
Well, Greg actually made the transition to South Carolina. He's right across the border. So
Gotcha.
I've been very fortunate to, I knew Greg for a long time and admired the incredible business that he and the team built. But even more so admired getting to to travel with him and to be in the field with him and just see his reach across the industry is incredible, and just such a passionate, knowledgeable guy that everybody just gravitates towards. Greg is awesome.
Sure. Perfect. Well, I appreciate your time today, G. Paul. It was an absolute honor to have you on Elevation with Chris Oram, the show where we talk to individuals who have climbed the ladder of success, and you definitely fit that narrative.
It's been my honor as well. Thank you so much, Chris.
Perfect, G. Paul. Thanks, and we'll take care, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Thanks for watching.
See ya.